Hello, my name is Mary Little Finnegan. I'm one of the school counselors at Nathan Hale-Ray High School, and my colleague, Mr. Little, is my co-counselor. Today, what we will be doing is talking a little bit about financing your education beyond high school. We really want to start a conversation between students and parents about financial aid, and those conversations can begin as early as freshman year of high school. We'll also talk a little bit about the process, which is of most interest to our senior parents. So to give you an idea of some of the things that we'll be talking about, we will identify what is financial aid, where it comes from, and the process of applying for that financial aid. We are also going to give you some information on how to understand your financial aid award once it comes back from the colleges. And then hopefully provide you with some tips that we've learned throughout the years that might help you through this process. So first, what I'd like to start out with is just talking about some financial aid myths. So our myth number one, that the FAFSA is too hard to fill out. Many, many years ago, that might have been the case, but the federal government has been looking for more and more ways to make the FAFSA easier. And you'll hopefully see throughout our presentation that they have achieved that. So we're going to show you the steps of how easy it is to actually complete it. Myth number two, a lot of people think that their family might make too much money to qualify for aid. The fact is that for some aid, every family is qualified. So it doesn't matter how much your family makes, you will be qualified for some aid, and that would include federal loans. Myth number three, my grades aren't good enough for me to get aids. Well, grades don't have anything to do with financial aid. They might have something to do with merit aid, which is something that comes from colleges or universities or any institution really. But there are all different kinds of aid that does not involve your grades. And then on the myth number four, that the FAFSA is only for grant money and scholarships. Actually, the FAFSA is the only way that you can become eligible for federal loans. And we'll talk a little bit about the federal loans that you are eligible for through the FAFSA. Another myth that many people believe about financial aid is that it really doesn't matter when you turn in the FAFSA as long as you meet the deadline. This is really, really important. Federal aid, or excuse me, financial aid is distributed on a first come, first served basis. So it is so important that you get this information, you complete the FAFSA as soon as possible. Every school has its own individual deadline. Some schools have a February 1st or a February 15th. Some schools even have a March 1st deadline. Don't pay attention to those deadlines. Fill out your FAFSA as soon as possible, because colleges and universities will start to award that aid as soon as they receive the information on the FAFSA. Another myth that some people believe is that they only have to fill out the FAFSA once. This is incorrect. You need to fill out the FAFSA every single year that you are going to college, or even if you're planning on going into graduate school. So each year you will apply for aid, and the aid will be awarded based on the financial information that you're providing. So if there have been changes in your financial status, you may receive more aid, or you could receive less. Another myth, if a parent files the FAFSA, they're obligated to contribute to a student's tuition. This is incorrect. This is a personal decision that happens between you and your student. The FAFSA does require parents' financial information, but it does not mean you are obligated to pay for your student's college education. And then our final myth, that estimated family contribution number is the exact amount that you have to pay. So we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about estimated family contribution, or EFC. EFC is not the exact amount of money that you have to pay. In some cases, you may end up paying more than your estimated family contribution. In other cases, you may end up paying less. So that's really just kind of a baseline or a starting point. All right, so here are some facts about financial aid. Believe it or not, there are only 80 schools in the United States that meet 100% of a student's financial need. Of those, in those 80 schools, all of that money includes some loans. So when they say that they meet 100%, that's all, that could be a little bit confusing because you are going to have to take out loans in order to meet that financial need. And the question would be, how much in loans are these different schools offering? So there are over 3,000 colleges in the United States, colleges and universities, and only 80 profess to meet 100% of student financial need with loans. There are only 18 schools in the United States that meet 100% without the loans. And if you can see from the look of the 5 colleges that we've listed there, these tend to be the schools that are top tier schools with huge endowments. So they have a lot of money to be able to give to students. And one of the most important things to keep in mind as you're looking at financial aid is that every school has their own methodology for calculating aid. So no matter, you can go from school to school, they have their own philosophy, their own process, how they will award this money. And it being so individual, they don't really make it easy on you. And so this is why when we'll talk a little bit further on about meeting with financial aid officers, how you would approach them if you were to need more money. So one of the biggest things that we really want to emphasize when we start to talk about financial aid is starting a conversation. Being able to find a school that is the right fit for you. And we talk, Mr. Little and I talk a lot to students about finding the right academic fit and the right social personal fit for students. One of the things that we want to really start talking more about is finding the right financial fit for a school. Some of you may have heard that when we talk about finding a good academic fit for students, we will talk about reach, realistic, and likely schools. So a reach school would be a school that has a higher academic profile than you might have as a student. Whereas a realistic school is a good match for you. Your academic profile and their academic profile are perfect. And for a likely school is probably a school that has an academic, is looking for a student that has an academic profile a little bit lower than what your student might have. We encourage students to find a mix of these different schools when they're looking for academic fit. We really want students to do the exact same thing when we're talking about the cost of college, is finding a good financial fit. So looking for a reach school, which might be a school that's a little bit of a stretch financially for you. Finding a realistic school, which would be a good match, that you have the resources and the funds to be able to pay for that college in a comfortable fashion that you feel really good about. And then the likely school would be a school that would be a breeze to pay for. And typically, you know, some of these schools might be the community colleges. So one of the things that Mr. Little and I often talk to students about is that you may have an idea of what your financial aid will look like, and we'll talk a little bit further on about calculating your estimated family contribution prior to applying to college. But what we want you to think about is that you may not know exactly what financial aid you will get from a particular college. So looking at a wide range, or looking at a reach, a realistic, or a likely school for financial fit is really a good approach to both, not only for finding the academic fit, but finding a financial fit as well. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Little.
So for the financial fit, finding what realistic, reach, and likely would be, there's a multitude of resources that you can look into based on different family uniqueness and what they've earned in the past, what they have in the present, and what they're looking forward to the future. Every family is different. We all have different incomes, different assets, a multitude of reasons why you would have different aid. If you can go to the next one, Ms. Liffingham. So past. This is for like families that have saved up over time, including parent-student savings, 529 plans, which are investment plans for the future for college purposes that go into higher education. These are often not taxed and only help pay for college. And then there's also investments. Families might have investments that go towards college costs. You can go to the next one. Present. a family can redirect their income and spending priorities. So if you have monthly payments, or you can have student work study funds. So with monthly payments, you can reach out to schools and pay like maybe a monthly payment for them based on what the school is willing to work with you for. And then there's also students that can work study that gets directly into, it can pay for their tuition that way by working on campus. And there's Future. Future is borrowing and the loan capacity for each parent and student. Student loans, parent loans. These often may have accruing interest based on what you're applying for, and at some point will have to be paid back. If it's not a scholarship or a grant, if it is a loan, it tends to be paid back later with interest accrued. Next one, Ms. Lippin again. So then there's this FAFSA Forecaster. The FAFSA Forecaster is a tool that projects your EFC, which is your expected family income. And the expected family income is the amount of your school's anticipates you, the amount your school anticipates that you can afford to put towards education or cost of attendance. This is an extremely slimmed down version of the FAFSA. With the FAFSA, you need a lot of tax information based on the previous year. But if you're using this tool, it gives you a rough estimate based on gross income of both your income and your student's income. And what that does is that it has a federal algorithm that kind of produces how much you're expected to be paying as a family, looking at the certain school. And then also other terms, as I said, the EFC, it is a measure of your family's financial strength. It's calculated according to a formula established by law. So the algorithm kind of gets put forth to figure out how much you're expected to pay for said school. And it's derived from the information provided on the FAFSA. Again, that FAFSA Forecaster is a really slimmed down tool to help you kind of give you a sense of what you'll be paying for or expected to pay. And there's a cost of attendance. The cost of attendance includes all costs, not just for like tuition. It includes direct and indirect expenses, including like living on campus and other kind of expenditures that you'll be looking at, including like traveling. So, and the EFC is calculated based on the parent contribution and the student contribution, and that equals the family contribution, the estimated family. It gives you a rough sense of what the schools are expecting you to pay.
Okay, so another critical piece of financial aid is what's called cost of attendance. So each school has a different tuition and a cost of attendance, and this varies over time and from school to school. So whether that's through tuition increases or whether that's the expense of one school over another, cost of attendance will be different. It may also vary based on your major. So let's say that you were in an engineering major or maybe even some sort of the medical field. If there are labs, you might find that there is a cost for those labs. So this is what we mean by when we say that an engineering major may actually pay more than, say, a poli-sci major. And then finally, that your need will be based on cost of attendance, or student need will vary based on the cost of attendance. So at a school that has a really high cost of attendance, the student need may be more, whereas it would be less at a school that costs less. So let's talk a little bit about how what is included in cost of attendance. It's actually divided into two different categories, so direct costs and indirect costs. So a direct cost is something that is billed directly to you. It's the things that you will get on the bill from your particular college or university. And these include tuition and housing, a meal plan, and lots of different required fees. So there might be a student government fee or a student activity fee. Like I said, there might be lab fees. One of the things that we want you to pay particular attention to is an insurance fee. So many colleges and universities require all students to have medical insurance when they come on campus. You may actually still cover your student on your personal health insurance. So you would be kind of like double paying for that insurance. Many colleges and universities have waivers that you can fill out that could save you a couple of $1,000s a year. So make sure as you're looking at the cost of attendance to pay particular attention to the insurance piece of it. And if your policy covers your child while they are away at school, this may be someplace where you can save yourself some money. Let's talk about indirect costs. So these are things that are a little bit more nebulous. Things like travel and textbooks and personal expenses, you know, having pizza on Friday nights, or any other sort of self-care type miscellaneous expenses. Colleges and universities build that into the cost of attendance as well, because if you're living in Connecticut and you're traveling to California, you have to, and you're going to have a couple of trips back and forth each year, you're going to want to work that into your budget. And how you address these indirect costs is really up to you. Some people, some parents and students build this right into the entire cost. And some, like if you're living in Connecticut and attending college in Connecticut, it may not be as big an impact on you. So how is student need calculated? It's a formula and it looks kind of simple, but it's as Mr. Little was saying, that the expected family contribution is an algorithm. It's a formula that's created by the federal government and dictated by law. But essentially calculating student need is the cost of attendance to a college or university minus your expected family contribution. And that is the result is the student financial need. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the different types of financial aid that you will come across. And it's basically broken down into a couple of different categories. The first one that we'll talk about is grants. Now grants, that's money that does not have to be paid back. And they come in the form of federal grants, state grants, and institutional grants. So as you take a look at a financial aid award, you will see all of these things listed out. What is a federal grant? An Pell Grant is actually one of the federal grants. State grants, there might be different names and titles for those. And then the ones that an institution is able to give you would have a different name. The Pell Grant is one that is most people are very familiar with. It is based on a high degree of financial need. And you'll see there that the maximum amount that can be received through the Pell Grant in the 2020-2021 school year would be $6,300. Again, grants are good things because this is money that doesn't have to be paid back. So there's lots and lots of different types of loans, right? So, and the loans are the money that needs to be paid back, and they can be in the form of student loan, a parent loan, or a private loan. We're going to talk a little bit more about the most frequently given loans, which would be the direct subsidized and the direct unsubsidized. You may be familiar with these. They used to be called the Stafford loan, but there has been a name change for it, and now they are direct subsidized and direct unsubsidized. So the direct subsidized loan is given to students where their financial need is a necessity when given these particular loans. So there are specific requirements that a student must meet to get this particular loan. It is a student loan, so parents are not co-signing for this particular loan. And you'll see those requirements that a student needs to, in order to get this loan, are listed on the screen. Because of the payment schedule and how interest accrues on the direct subsidized loans, these are the ones that are actually really favorable for students to take, because you do not have to pay back this loan until 6 months after having left school. And that means graduation or otherwise. So let's say that you did a year of school and you decided it wasn't for you. 6 months after you leave school is when you need to start paying it back. But the beautiful thing about the direct subsidized loan is that interest does not accrue while you are in school. It starts to accrue once you have met that 6-month benchmark of having left school. And you'll see there that is the most recent interest rate, 4.53%. So unsubsidized loans, the direct unsubsidized loan, you do not have to have financial need to qualify for this. Again, it is a student loan, so no cosigner is needed. And you'll see the requirements for this particular loan on your screen. This same thing needs to be paid back 6 months after you have left school. The biggest difference between the subsidized and the unsubsidized loan is that the unsubsidized loan interest begins accruing upon disbursement. And simply what that means is that once you access that loan, you will begin accruing interest. So if a loan is dispersed in the fall, you'll start having interest applied to that particular loan beginning at that time. Many schools, one of the things that they will do is disperse in the fall and then in the spring. So you're not dispersing a full amount of a loan at the beginning of the year. So there's a little bit of a lag there. There's also something that's called a parent loan for undergraduate students, or the PLUS loan. And you'll see the requirements here. One of the things that I would urge you to do is to look closely at this particular loan. You may find that you can get a better interest rate for a private loan somewhere else. And sometimes there are some criteria that must be met that may not necessarily be favorable to you. So if this is something that is offered to you, you want to make sure that you take a look at the specifics on this particular loan. So finally, I just wanted to show you in regards to loans that there are limits to how much a student can receive. You'll see those limits here on your screen. In the first year, the student can only receive $5,500. That turns into $6,500 in your second year. In the third and the fourth year, you can receive $7,500 each year. But those are the caps, and with college costing anywhere from $25,000 to $75,000, you'll understand that the difference needs to be made up between those loans with scholarships and grants and maybe even some private loans. So another type of financial aid that comes to students is work study. This is money that is paid directly to the student. And I would urge you, if you are awarded work study money, that you be very, very careful about how you look at this. Students will work on campus and receive a paycheck. In order for this to be applied to your bill, a student would have to then take that paycheck to the bursar's office and apply it to the bill. So if you have concerns that that might not happen, this actually for a lot of students becomes their pocket money. So they would maybe work all summer long and not through the work study program, apply that money that they have saved to their bill and then use the work study money for any expenses that they might have during the school year. And let's talk about our favorite kind of money, which is again, the free money, and this is the best kind. So scholarships, this is again, money that doesn't have to be paid back. And there are so many different resources that you can look to for finding scholarships. One of our best resources is here at the school counseling office. We use Naviance for our students, and we post any scholarship that we receive to Naviance. So we encourage students to keep looking at the scholarship list and applying for those scholarships whenever they become available. There are also lots of resources online. They're listed here, FastWeb, scholarships.com, and Naviance actually has a resources that they connect to other scholarship companies. These companies that we've listed here, we have taken a look at, and we understand that they are really, really good resources. They allow you to create a profile about yourself so that they will then identify scholarships that you might meet the criteria for and send them in your direction so that you can make an application. Another really great resource for scholarships would be your parents' place of employment, whether that be here at Hale-Ray. There's a scholarship that is offered by the Education Association. There are many corporations or other institutions offer scholarships as well. So we would encourage you to look at your place of employment and make a determination as to whether or not there's any scholarships your student might be able to apply for. And then finally, we have the East Haddam local scholarships. These typically come online in a February, March April timeframe with due dates that vary from May to early June. So we work with students all through the spring to encourage them to apply to these scholarships. There's, for a small community like East Haddam, I think last year we gave away almost $85,000 in scholarship money. So there's a lot out there to be had. And then there are college-specific scholarships. You may find that you have been awarded a presidential scholarship from your particular college or university. So these are really great things that you may reduce the amount of money that you need to pay. All right, Mr. Little, over to you.
Okay, so who should apply? Everyone, both student and parent. It's very essential that you spend the time with your student to go over how to, like, going through the application process, putting information in, and making sure everything's squared away. A student will have a login and a parent will have a login. So you want to make sure that you both have that ready to go. You can go to the next one. When do you apply? Now, October 1st was when it opened. You definitely want to complete it as soon as you can because it's first come, first serve. So that being that if you apply early, you have a better chance of receiving aid than if you apply months from now. You do not have to wait you don't have to submit your college application and then complete this. You want to complete this as soon as possible. You can always add colleges at a later point to it, but just know that you can only add up to 10 schools on FAFSA. So you want to keep that in mind. And you must complete each year, and you must know your school deadlines, like Ms. Liffigan mentioned earlier in this presentation. It could be January, February, March. That doesn't really matter. You definitely want to apply as soon as you can. Sooner the better. And where and how do you apply? FAFSA.com, or FAFSA.org, I should say. It's the free application for federal student aid. And like I said, you'll need some things with you as you apply, but I'll go over that in a few slides. There's also the CSS profile, which is next. CSS profile is a more in-depth FAFSA, but it's for specific schools. It's for institutional aid. And that depends if the school requires it. Not all schools require it, but some might. So when you're applying to a certain school, it might be under their need to do or must be completed. You'll see that the CSS profile, like I said, is a beefier version of the FAFSA. It gets more in depth with certain like assets and certain other costs or things that your family contributes to. But there's also more wiggle room when it comes to explaining reasons why you might have certain assets or other reasons you can explain that you might not be able to explain in the FAFSA. It is more intensive, but it does offer quite a bit. And what do I need to apply? So for FAFSA, you will need to have your user login. I mentioned that in the previous slide that both the parent and the student need a login, and you will both need to log in to have information to submit. You want to do this now, and you want to go to the following link to create your FAFSA ID. It looks like this. Pretty straightforward. All you have to do is just enter your information, email. You're going to confirm your email, make a username, create a password. This will be used later when really going through the FAFSA and when you submit it. That way you can log back in and have all your information ready to go, including the parent.
Can I just add that sometimes it takes between 24 and 48 hours to get your student login. So this is really something that you want to take care of prior to sitting down and completing your FAFSA.
Right. So what do you need to apply? You're going to need your student social security number, your parent social security number, driver's license if you have one, federal tax information, returns, untaxed income, including child support, interest income, savings, checking account balances, investments, business, farm assets. It's a lot to really have with you, but it's necessary for reporting to the government. You want to make sure that you have all this information correct because you don't want anything to really hold you back or for them to hold like federal aid based on trying to fix something that was submitted wrong. Say if you submit your social security number wrong, you don't want that to hold up the process. Next one, Ms. Liffigan. And then some key points, there's the IRS detail retrieval tool. This is nice because it kind of streamlines the FAFSA process. Like Ms. Liffingham said in the past, it was a really engulfing process uploading all of your information into the website. With the IRS data retrieval tool, it actually makes it pretty easy. It's fast, easy, accurate. You press one button and you're able to import your tax, your tax return into the FAFSA through the IRS portal. So it saves a lot of time, it's easy, and it's reliable. It highly recommend doing that just so it speeds up the process for you. FAFSA will collect information from both legal parents, whether they're married or gender. They will need both information from them. And then another question is, did you complete the 1040 Schedule 1? That is the tax form that includes additional income and adjustments to income. So if you had unemployment in the last couple of months, or if you have different kinds of income like alimony, those are all listed on that form and will need to be documented in some way with FAFSA. So you're not held up when trying to proceed with financial aid.
Okay, so now we can start talking about how you apply for financial aid. So remember, we talked about at the beginning of this presentation that one of the myths of the FAFSA is that it is very, very difficult to go through. The federal government has actually created a mobile app now where you can actually apply for financial aid, for federal financial aid through your phone. So if this is something that you are, would like to do, or if your kid feels more comfortable, your student feels more comfortable filling out the FAFSA on their phone versus filling it out on a laptop or on a desktop, this is a great tool that you might be able to use. And just make sure that the app that you're downloading is called My Student Aid, and that it's from the U.S. Department of Education. If you feel more comfortable doing it on your desktop or your laptop, this is what the student aid FAFSA website looks like. One of the things that I want to point out is that you want to absolutely positively make sure that you are at the correct website. So you'll see that there is an official website of the United States government. I've circled that in red. There are a lot of phishing sites that are out there. So you want to make sure that you go to studentaid.gov. That is the correct site. Please don't ever pay for the FAFSA. This is a free service. So there's lots of companies out there that will charge you $75, $80 to fill out a free application. I hope that as we go through this process, and we're going to go through some very, very brief screens, that you'll get the feel that this is really not such a cumbersome process, and that you will be able to do it on your own. And as I said before, you're going to need your FAFSA ID before you start this process. So it's hopefully you will do that a day or two before you're ready to complete the FAFSA. All right, so the next couple of screens are really just screenshots of what the actual FAFSA looks like online. And this is a demo that is provided by the federal government. So you'll see the first page is just some basic demographic information. And across the top of the form, you'll see that there are tabs that identify like what portion of this process you are completing. So now we go into school selection. One of the things that's really, really great about the FAFSA, is that it saves from page to page. So you'll see at the top that we've now moved into school selection. And this is where you will identify the high school that you have attended. And you can search for that. Excuse me. Okay, on this page is where.
You okay there, Ms. Liffin again?
Apparently, I've been talking too much.
You got this.
Yeah. So, excuse me. On this page, you'll see that you have to fill in the information about the colleges that you will be sending your information to. And as Mr. Little said before, there are 10 different colleges that you can send to at a time. So any of the schools that your student is applying to, you want to make sure that you are sending your FAFSA information to that particular school. And you can search for that school by state, by city, or by the particular school's name. So once you do that, it will come up. I search for Connecticut. You'll see it has listed all of the schools in Connecticut. I find the one that I'm looking for, and then I can add it to my list. So here I've added University of Connecticut stores, and it's asking me what my plan is for housing. That's the next thing that you have to include here. As we go on to the next section, it talks about dependency. So you will identify the information regarding your household size. It asks you to count yourself, as well as in this, if this is based on the student, if there's a spouse, or if there are any other family members in the household. And then it also, this is very important because this is part of the formula, how many of the students in your household are attending college in this coming school year. We then move on to parental demographics, and there are several pages that ask questions about parents. Students can either fill this portion out by themselves, or parents can fill this out. And there's a number of different pages that you'll go through putting in parent information. We then move on to financial information. And as Mr. Little was talking about the data, IRS data retrieval tool, you'll see that that is on this page. It asks some details about how you filed your return. One of the things to keep in mind is that you are filing your FAFSA based on the prior year's tax return. So if you are a parent that is applying for financial aid in the 2021, 2022, gosh, it's so hard to believe we're already there. If you're applying for financial aid in the 2021, 2022 school year, you will be using your taxes from the 2020 school year. And down at the bottom, you'll see is the link to the data, IRS data retrieval tool. Excuse me. One of the great things about the FAFSA is every step along the way, wherever you see a question mark, you can click on that question mark and it will take you to a helps and hints panel. So if you have a question about what is considered taxable combat pay in your adjusted gross income, it will give you some information about where to find that on your tax return. And then another great thing about the FAFSA is that it's not going to allow you to complete anything if there's an error. So you'll see at the bottom of this screen, there's a button that says check for errors. It allows you to go back through your entire FAFSA, and it will make sure that everything agrees, every item agrees with every other item, so that you are not held up because there's an error in your FAFSA. And these last two pages are simply a review of all of the information that you have included in your FAFSA. You want to make sure that you proofread this and that the information is accurate. And then finally, both the student and the parent needs to sign and submit this FAFSA. If just a student signs it, it will be held up. You do need the parent FAFSA ID in order to move forward. All right, Mr. Little, my voice needs a rest. I'm going to turn it over to you.
You made it. Good job. All right. So after you apply, you want to make certain that you click submit. It happens from time to time. You'd be surprised how many families forget to hit submit. Just make sure you hit submit. You know, you're not going to get any results if nothing goes through. You want to print your submission screen. That way you have documented proof that it was submitted. And if there's any issues going forward, you'll have that proof. You also get a student aid report. This will summarize your responses. I would also maybe print that off if it's not too long. That's good to have, just to summarize, to make sure that everything you said was accurate. If you wake up one morning and you're like, oh, I didn't put the right information in, you can refer to the student aid report to clarify if you did or not. You also want to check your status online. When you fill out the FAFSA, you will not be told right away what the results are. It's going to take a couple of days. It has to be analyzed through the channels. So don't get impatient, just give it some time. You want to watch out for emails and letters, and then verification. If something needs to be verified, it'll be sent to you to verify. And so frequent FAFSA errors include little things that can add up. So paying for the FAFSA. If it's free, you should not pay for the FAFSA. It's literally called the free application for student aid, a federal application for student aid. I always think it's free application. Just remember that. Not submitting again, you want to make sure that you submit. You can't go anywhere if you don't hit submit. Can't pass go. Social security numbers, they can get pretty long. You just want to make sure you have the right numbers, because again, if you put the wrong number in, they might mistake you for someone else, and it could get complicated. It could hold back the process even more. So just make sure that you have that information correct. Not including including school number on FAFSA. You want to make sure that you include that correct too, along with the social security numbers. Another one is divorced, remarried parental information. That's also important. That's key to not holding the process, getting that information correct. And then federal income tax paid, make sure you have that correct. Like Miss Little Finnegan said previously, it's from the year before taxes, not this year. And household size is also very important. You want to make sure that you have everyone in there, the number of people in your household. And then the number of household members in college. Federal government wants to know who else is receiving federal aid or who else is attending college. Financial aid tips, find out and meet deadlines. Like we said earlier, it could be a January, February, March deadline. You definitely want to make sure that you're on top of that per school. Again, it varies, but it's generally around that time where things are due. Make and keep copies of everything. Like we said, the essay, the student aid report, the confirmation page, keep those handy just in case something goes wrong or you need to verify something. You'll have that at your disposal. You also want to compare financial aid awards. So after you apply to colleges, you'll receive what they're willing to give you for financial aid. You definitely want to make sure that you know which college is giving which. Usually that'll help you kind of base your decision about where you might want to go. A lot of times students decide based on financial aid, and it makes a lot of sense. I mean, we're living in a time where whoever's willing to give the most money is the one that students will most likely go to, unless they're dead set on a certain college. And then contact the college financial aid office. This is your #1 go-to, I would say, when it comes to anything financial aid related. They'll know the ins and outs of their school better than Miss Little Finnegan or I would know at a heartbeat. They will know what they can offer in terms of like work study, if they can offer other kinds of financial aid. But again, they're your #1 go-to for any information about that. So your reward, so the cost of attendance minus your EFC, which was your estimated family contribution, which was right here. The cost of attendance is $26,000. Your EFC is $10,000. That leaves a $16,000 deficit, which you will need for financial aid purposes. So that's kind of your target you want to reach when applying to schools. And then you have this information here, kind of details the awards that you might win and the balance that remains after your EFC is included. Again, scholarships and grants you do not need to pay back. Loans usually have a interest on them, which you will pay back later. And work study, again, could be used to pay for your bill, or it could be used for pocket change. Just be careful with that. Your award, how to pay the balance. Like we said, savings based on present, past, or future, present income, payment plans. If a school is willing to work with you, I would definitely contact the financial aid office, like we said earlier in the previous slide. They will know the ins and outs of what they're willing to work with you with. If it comes down to monthly plans or even weekly plans. I'm not too sure about that, but I'm sure some schools are willing to work with you no matter what you need. There's also the PLUS loan, which was the parent loan, and then also private loans if you're looking at like Sallie Mae, those kind of loans. Those might have a big interest rate, so you might want to watch out for some of them. I hate to say it, but I feel like there's some loan sharks out there that will charge a high interest rate. So just make sure that you're smart about accepting loans from certain private practices. And you want to calculate your debt. You want to take a long view of how much you will owe in 4 years. So it's nice to get the money in the moment, but you're also talking about your whole life. You know, I'm still paying back my loans being 28 and going to college at like 20. You want to be smart with how you're spending the money too. If you give like a couple $1,000s to an 18-year-old kid, they're going to want to spend money on things that aren't related to school. So you want to be very smart with how you deliver, how your approach is with that money. You know, you can go into some serious debt, taking out private loans and some other questionable loans. The average student loan debt in Connecticut is $38,000, which isn't too bad, but it's still pretty high for trying to pay that back. And things to look out for grants. Grants are good because you don't have to pay them back, but you want to make sure that they'll turn into a loan later down the road. You want a clear name and explanation of what the grant is for. You want to make sure that's renewable. Just because it's given 1 year freshman year doesn't mean that you'll necessarily get it the next year. So you want to make sure that's like reoccurring every year. Like I said, sometimes it might be for 1 year, it could be for all 4 years. You definitely want to look at the terms and conditions and make sure that you understand what the loan applies to or what is the background of the loan. I mean, grants, I'm sorry, grants. We're going to talk about loans next. You want to make sure that there's a clear difference between subsidized and unsubsidized loans based on need versus not need. You want to make sure the interest rate, like I said, you don't want to put yourself in so much debt that later down the road that you're really kicking yourself because the rate was so high. You want to be smart when looking for loans. Repayment terms, you want to make sure that you have clear definition of that afterwards. Who is the borrower, you know, long-term costs, and you can decline loans. If you take the subsidized loan, that is based on not needs, right? Let me slow again. We said not needs for subsidized.
No, the subsidized loan is the one that it does not accrue interest until after you graduate or leave school. So the subsidized loan is really, really the best bet for any, if you have to take a loan, take the subsidized. If you want to turn something down, turn down the unsubsidized because that starts to accrue interest as soon as it is dispersed.
Thank you, appreciate that. And then scholarships, be aware of the outside scholarship policy. You want to make sure that an award will not be reduced if you receive an outside scholarship. Sometimes that can happen based on if the scholarship policy says that, you know, if you receive an outside scholarship, you can be reduced for that reason. You always want to read the fine print. You want to know what you're getting into, especially with money. A good thing about scholarships, you know, to pay them back, but you also want the best out of them. You don't want to lose any kind of money out of them if you don't read a certain stipulation based on the fine print. And then next one, you can also appeal an award. If you apply to, let's say Central, and you don't get the money you thought you would get from them, you can appeal it. It's not a negotiation. It's not that, you know, well, they didn't give me enough money, so I'm going to go and, you know, ask if I can get more money. It's more of a formal process. You have to have documentation prepared and to request more aid. So like it says on the screen, you want to have updated grades, GPA, if you take new test scores, or if you have not shared previous information that could contribute to more of an award. Again, it's not like, they didn't give me money, so I'm going to go complain to them. It's more you need to really advocate and have a formal process of requesting an appeal. And then the student should lead the conversation. The parent shouldn't. It's about the student. They want to hear from the student, obviously. It's their education. And if you do believe that you deserve more for an award, a good approach is to go to the financial aid officer and just say, can you help me understand how the aid was calculated? That way they'll have a clear breakdown of how it was calculated, and if there's any like ambiguity, it'll be solved based on that algorithm. And next, I believe these are our resources. If you need to review, or if you need any other insights about applying, I mean, of course, the FAFSA was there, so that's going to be your go-to for aid. You have to complete that. And then you can also use this, the financial aid, finaid.org. It's a comparison tool to help you kind of compare the two different kind of awards. And then that's it, I think. That's our presentation. Thank you for sticking around and watching. Is there anything else you want to include, Ms. Finnegan?
No, if there are any questions or if we can clarify anything that we have covered in our presentation, please reach out to either Mr. Little or myself, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. But we can't stress enough how much of a resource your financial aid officer at your particular college or university will be. We, as a parent and student, have applied for financial aid, but when it comes to actually administering it, that's where the colleges and universities have more information than we do. All right.
All right.
So thanks very much and have a great night.
Thank you so much for attending.